All right, so today we're going to start with a warm-up of foiling just to get back into the swing of things. So we're going to go ahead and FOIL. We're going to start with the first term. Do our first x times x is x squared. Outer, 5 times x is 5x. Inner, we have 1x. And our last, 1 times 5 is 5. So I can go ahead and combine my like terms, and I have a 5x and a 1x, and that makes 6x. I have x squared plus 6x plus 5. All right, so same thing here. First outer, inner, last. Your first should be m squared. Your outer should be 6m. Your inner should be negative 4m. And your last should be negative 24. Combine your like terms to get 6 minus 4 is 2. So I have m squared plus 2m minus 24. All right, and the last one, same thing. First, k times k is k squared. Outer, k times negative 3, it's negative 3k. Inner, negative 7 times k is negative 7k. And last, negative 7 times a negative 3 is a positive 21. Okay, so then combine our like terms, we get a negative 10 here. All right, so there's our final answer. So today we're going to be talking about factoring trinomials. And to factor a trinomial in the form x squared plus bx plus c, which is what we have from our warm-up, you must find two integers that add to b, so the term with just the x, and multiply to get that c term. Okay, so you're looking for what numbers can multiply together to get the last term, but add together to get that middle term. So our guided example here, we have x squared plus 7x plus 12. So what two integers have a product of 12 and a sum of 7? Okay, so I know that to get 12 to multiply by 12, we get 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4. Well, 1 times 12 does not add up to 7. 2 times 6 does not add up to 7, but 3 times 4 does. So 3 and 4 is going to be the numbers we want to use. Okay, so we're going to write two binomials then using these integers, and then we're going to distribute to check. So we're going to go ahead and just do this and this. And since we have an x squared here, nothing else, we're just going to put our x. Okay, they're both positive, plus 3, plus 4. And then to check our answer, we're going to go ahead and do our first. We get x squared. Our outer, that's 4x. Our inner, that's 3x. And our last, that's 12. Add our like terms, we have 4 plus 3 is 7x squared plus 7x plus 12. And as you can see that this answer does match our original, so we are good. All right, so for set 1, it's very similar to the first one. You are looking for the two integers that multiply together to get that last number. So they multiply together to get 20. But when you add them, you get 9. So I'm going to think of all the numbers I can possibly multiply to get 20. And I know it's 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. Well, the only one of those that adds up together to get 9 is 4 and 5. So I know that I'm going to have n plus 4 and n plus 5. All right, so you're going to try the next 3. Okay, for number 2, when you try that one, you should get w plus 6 and w plus 3. Pause the video and try the next ones if you haven't yet. For number 3, you should have had a plus 6 and a plus 4, because 6 times 4 is 24, but when you add them together, you get 10. Okay, and then for the last one, you should have y plus 1 and y plus 1. Now remember, if you have the same term like this, you actually want to write that as y plus 1 squared. Okay, this is the most simple version of this. This is still right, yes, but the most simplified version is technically this with that exponent. All right, so for set 2, now we have an addition and a subtraction sign here. So we're looking for what numbers multiply together to get a negative 18, but add together to get a positive 3. So remember, if we're multiplying here to get a negative, one of our numbers is going to be negative, and one of them is going to be positive. So I'm going to go ahead and start by just putting my parentheses, doing my n and my n, because it's only one n term here. Okay, and one's going to be positive, and one's going to be negative. So now I got to think of what numbers multiply together to get negative 18. I know 18 and 1. Well, either one of those could be negative. I do know that 6 times 3 is 18. And if I make one of those negative, I bet I could get 3 with that. So if I had 6 times a negative 3, that'll give me negative 18. And then 6 minus 3 is a positive 3. So we want a positive 6 and a negative 3 here. And if you check your work, you get n squared, and then negative 3n, 6n, and negative 18. And negative 3n plus 6n is a positive 3n. So I do know that this is the correct answer. Please, please, please make sure that you are checking your work, especially for these ones that have 2 different signs, to make sure you're putting that number in the right spot. Because you might have the right 2 numbers, you might have just put them in the wrong location, and that could mess up that middle number. So please make sure you are going back and you are foiling again to make sure your answer is correct. All right, so I want you to try number 6, 7, and 8. Pause the video, try them, and come back when you're ready. So for number 6, we're looking for numbers that multiply to get negative 8 and add together to get 2. So for negative 8, I know that I can get 8 times 1 is 8, and 4 times 2 is 8. But I need something to add together to get 2. I know 8 and 1, there's no way I can make that equal 2. But 4 and 2, I can figure out a way to get that to be a positive 2, with one of those being negative. So if I want to get a positive 2, I want my bigger number to be the positive one and my smaller number to be the negative one. So if I'm using 4 and 2, I'm going to have a positive 4 and a negative 2 to make this work. And again, you check your answer by foiling to make sure that you have the correct answer. So I'm going to do x squared, negative 2x, 4x, negative 8. And then negative 2 plus 4 is a positive 2, so I do know this works. For number 7, you should have had g plus 3, g minus 2. Okay, and for number 8, you should have had c plus 9 and c minus 5. Okay, so the next set has all subtraction signs. Okay, so remember, we're still trying to get that negative number at that end. So one of our numbers is going to be positive and one's negative. But this time we want our middle number to be negative. So this time, our bigger number is going to be the negative one to make these end up being negative. So for our first one, we have a squared minus 2a minus 3. So I'm looking for numbers that multiply together to get 3, but add together, multiply together to get negative 3, but add together to get negative 2. And I know negative 3 times 1 and negative 1 times 3 both work. But since I want the negative sign here as well, I'm going to make that bigger number, the 3, is going to be my negative one. So I'm going to go ahead and do a minus 3 and then a plus 1. All right, and just to check, I've got a squared, I've got positive 1, I've got a negative 3, and then I have a negative 3. And positive 1 minus 3 is a negative 2, so we are good here. So pause the video, try 10, 11, and 12. So for number 10, we're looking to get negative 30 and negative 7, and I know that 10 times 3 is 30. And if I want to get negative 7, I can do a negative 10 plus 3 to get negative 7. So I'm going to have a minus 10 and a plus 3. And make sure you are foiling to check your answers. And for number 11, we're going to do, to get 63, it's 9 times 7. And I know if you use a negative 9 and a positive 7, you can get a negative 2. So we have b minus 9 and b plus 7. Okay, and then for the last one, you should have had k minus 16 and k plus 4. All right, our last set for the mixed practice, we have a negative first and then a positive at the end. So if we have a negative here and a positive here, this means we want both of our numbers to be negative. So we're just going to look at what numbers we can multiply to get to this number and make sure they're both negative so they add up to get negative 11. So I do know that negative 8 times negative 3 will get me 24. And 8 plus 3 is 11, so negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. So that one's going to work. And we'll check with FOIL just to make sure that it works. Oops, that's a parenthesis. these. All right, and then you FOIL to check, and that should work out. So try 14, 15, 16, pause the video, try them. All right, for 14, you should get x minus 7 times x minus 7. And again, that's the same thing twice. So actually, we want to write that as x minus 7 squared. For 15, you should have y minus 9 and y minus 8. For 16, you should have m minus 10 and m minus 5. All right, so you're going to try to mix practice on your own, but we're going to jump ahead to the examples with the GCF. So if they have a GCF, you need to, first of all, find the greatest common factor between all of them, and then factor that number out. And then you can continue with the process of factoring. So in number 23, we have 4k squared, 12k, and 8. I know the 4 goes into all of those numbers. Okay, so I'm going to pull the 4 out, and then I'm going to divide everything by 4. So I have k squared, and then I have 3k, and then I have 2. So now I can go ahead and do my factoring and figure out what numbers multiply together to get 2, but add together to get 3. And I know 2 times 1 gets me 2, and 2 plus 1 does equal 3. So I'll have 4, and then k plus 2, and then k plus 1. Right, and it doesn't matter what order you write the two things in parentheses. I just typically write anything with addition first. For number 24, same idea. We want to factor out that number, and we have 2, negative 8, and negative 24. And I know a positive 2 goes into all of those because they're all even numbers. So I'm going to pull out that 2, and then I'm left with x squared minus 4x minus 12. And now I got to figure out what numbers multiply together to get negative 12, but add together to get negative 4. And I know that I'm going to need one positive and one negative since I'm trying to multiply together to get 12. So I'm going to have x plus something and x minus something. And I know to get 12, I can use 4 and 3, I can use 6 and 2, and I can use 12 and 1. Well, the only one that's going to get me to a 4 is going to be 6 and 2. So since I want this to be a negative 4, I need the 6 to be the negative number and the 2 to be the positive because I need the bigger, quote-unquote bigger number to be the one that's negative to make sure that that answer does stay negative. All right, so you're going to try the next few. I am going to show you real fast 26, though. Make sure when you're factoring that you're not forgetting to factor out that variable. So since these all have a common term of a, and they are all factors of 3, I'm going to pull 3a out of all of them. And then I'm left with a squared plus 10a plus 21. And then you can factor it from here.